Hello and welcome everyone to the second part in our Beyond Limits mini-series, a deeper look at thinking. In today's session, we're going to be looking at what is the invisible driver of my thinking. So for those of you who joined our last session, this really leads on from thinking about what is my thinking like when I'm at my best. We're going to take it a stage further now to look at the invisible driver of my thinking. So just to recap, our mission at Business Reimagine is to help people and businesses realise their infinite potential and consistently feel and perform at their best. But in order to do that, it's great if we understand where it comes from when we feel and perform at our best. And that's what we're really going to be exploring in today's session. So here's the overall series. So last week we looked at what is the role of my thinking when I feel and perform at my best. We're going to do a very quick recap of that for all of you and for the people that maybe didn't see last session. Today we're looking at what is the invisible driver of my thinking. Next week we're going to look at what do I need to know about stressful thinking, and I'm going to have a special guest with me, Dr. Giles Croft, who's going to be sharing his thoughts about stress. And the last part is how do my thinking and feelings interact? Now, when we innocently misunderstand that, it can get us in all sorts of problems. So we're going to start with just a very quick recap of last time and what we looked at. So we talked about the key is understanding and awareness, because when we know how the mind works, we do much better. In fact, when we know how anything works, we do much better. The peak performance literature shows that all of these things improve when we're at our peak performance. And they don't just improve, but it's just that we're more connected to them. So we naturally have greater well-being. We're naturally more engaged and creative and resilient when we're at our peak performance. So it's not a case of what do I need to do to get there, but how do I recognize what takes me out of my peak performance so that I can just course correct a little bit and get back to my natural state of peak performance. We looked at the topic of flow and the research into flow, and there were these two characteristics out of the 6 that Csikszentmihalyi realized in his research. So when we're at our best, the self disappears and we have this sense of effortlessness. So we know when we're in our best when we can identify with these two areas. So that's another sign that we're really at our best. So we get lost in the work, we're not having that self-talk, and it feels like a really great experience. We went on from looking at what's peak performance to what is thought, and we recapped some of the things about thought, the fact that thought always changes. Everyone thinks, that's a universal thing. It's a real creative potential that we have, and our experience changes whenever we have a new thought, and that's great. But also when we don't understand that, we can have thoughts like anxious thoughts, and then that becomes our reality. But thought has no life of its own. It only lasts as long as we think it. There's a great quote by the physicist David Bohm who says, thought creates our reality, and then says, I didn't do it. So we really have to recognize that thought is creating our reality in the moment, and thought creates our feelings. And that's why this mini series is going to help us understand the whole process. And we finished last week with this summary. So skills and techniques are crucial, but mental clarity is always the deciding factor in our performance. And we know that because sometimes the people who are the best in their field, we can think of athletes who suddenly, for whatever reason, we would assume a state of mind and mental clarity, they don't manage to perform in the moment. So really great to understand what is this mental clarity, where does it come from, and what, if anything, can I do to get more of it in my life? So what will you get from this mini series? When we see things differently, we do things differently. So much of training is based on what you need to do differently, but actually it really starts to step back from that. And that's why often training isn't very successful, because sometimes we know what we need to do, but in our mind, we're not still seeing it in the way that's going to help us make the change. So this is a quote from one of the directors that was on our Beyond Limits program. So the Beyond Limits program is a full 12-week program of coaching and group coaching sessions as well, and modules that helps people to really see their thinking and challenge the limits to help them feel and perform better. So the quote, "I found the insights that I've gained from the program to be extremely useful and equally applicable to my everyday life and in the management of my team." That's because we're starting with the person. This isn't about technique. You know, what you learn here, this understanding, it applies to all aspects of your life. So let's get into it. We're going to focus on state of mind now. And I'm going to start with a little example about children. Now, whether you have children or not, I'm sure you've seen a child that can be completely fine, and then suddenly it's tears and tantrums and upset. But once they've got over that, they go back to being completely fine. Sometimes they've still got the tears running down their cheeks, but they're fine because that is a function of state of mind. So our state of mind, for, you know, we always have to name things that we can't see, but think of this as your mood. It's something that's just shifting all the time. It's just going kind of positive, neutral, negative, and it's just bouncing around. And we have lots of systems in our body that do this. So our heart rate increases and it decreases depending on what we're doing. You know, our temperature goes up and down. In the UK, having uncharacteristically hot weather. I know some of you are from all around the world, but we're certainly feeling the temperature here at the moment. So what is this showing us, a state of mind? So it's showing that babies give us this natural display of state of mind changing, and they don't get caught up in, they don't have the same cognitive thinking. They haven't learned all the things about, and I'm entitled to stay upset because that person shouldn't have said that. So again, they can move much smoother, bouncing around the state of mind than adults can. So that's why we need to start getting a feel for this, because we always have this in the background and it drives all of our thinking and behavior. But the great thing is about our state of mind is that our mind is a self-correcting system. We have this psychological immune system, so it's designed to come low and to go back up again. So as long as we don't focus too much on the negative thinking we have in a low state of mind, as long as we see that that's made up and it's becoming a projection of how we're feeling in our state of mind in the moment, then our mind will naturally just lift. And you might have seen this yourself. I sometimes have it where if you've got had a difficult call maybe with a client, or something hasn't gone right, and you think, oh, I feel of worry, and I think, oh goodness, I wish I hadn't said that. And the next moment I'm distracted by something else. And then it's later that I realize, oh my goodness, I've forgot to be anxious about that thing. And that's just showing us that our mind is only going to give us the experience of whatever we're thinking at the time. So we all have this psychological immune system and we can rely on it 100% of the time. So let's get to know state of mind a little bit more. So I've just talked about how we can have high state of mind or low state of mind. So hot air balloon is a great example of this, because when we're in a high state of mind, or our peak performance, as we talked about last week, so we don't have the self-talk, we can concentrate, we can focus, we're more resilient. We have that perspective. Imagine once you're up in the sky in that hot air balloon and you're looking around and you're able to see and put things in perspective. But when we're in low state of mind, when we're on the ground, when we're surrounded by the chaos, we're seeing the projection of our state of mind. And the important thing to realize about state of mind is we need to know it, because things are much harder for us when we're in a low state of mind, and it's much more distorted. And this quote from Aaron Turner sums it up nicely. Working in an unclear state of mind is like driving a car with a flat tire. You can do it, but it's difficult, very inefficient, and inevitably gets worse the longer you do it. So what is it telling us? Our state of mind is just telling us that we need a break. We need to take our attention off of whatever it's obsessing about at the moment, because the mind is just doing what the mind does. The thinking is just following the state of mind. And if it's the low state of mind, we're going to get slightly negative thinking. So what does negative thinking look like? So we showed this slide in the last session as well, because we're starting to just get eyes for different kinds of thinking. So in a low state of mind, we can suddenly get more fears, or maybe I shouldn't say that, or I wish I hadn't said that. Maybe we become more judgmental. Well, they shouldn't have done that. That's wrong. We can get caught up in the structures. I'm not allowed to do that. We can create narratives. this person always does that, and we can take it personally. So we can start to see how a low state of mind really starts to play out in our thinking. And in a high state of mind, we have the opposite. And I wanted to bring in the topic of psychological safety because it's a hot topic at the moment, and for good reason. But really, the work on state of mind at the moment is more helpful to getting great psychological safety than focusing on the downside of psychological safety. So Dr. Amy Edmondson, when she studied psychological safety, she found that when people feel psychologically safe, they ask for help, they ask for feedback, they admit mistakes, and they challenge ways of working. So, and again, she found that where there was low psychological safety, people did less of those things, specifically in the healthcare centre. So what she said, though, is what you really need to draw on is 3 areas if you want to promote psychological safety: curiosity, humility, and empathy. And if you remember what we talked about with peak performance, if we actually understand what we like when we're at our best, and this applies to when we're in a higher state of mind, we naturally have these 3 elements. So in a high state of mind, remember, we've got that perspective. Rather than getting drawn into the narrative about what someone should or shouldn't have done, we can be more curious. We say, oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought to do it that way. We can have the humility that goes with it, and we can have the empathy and the compassion. So hopefully you're starting to get a sense for your state of mind and what it looks like and how it might play out in your thinking, because we have to know this, because whatever we think in the moment becomes our reality. But nice quote from Dr. Rani Bora, just because it looks real doesn't mean it's true. So we're always living in our own little VR headset, and that is determined by our state of mind at the time. We can see that most clearly when we look at something where you're having the same experience twice and experiencing it differently. Or in this case, 2 girls on the roller coaster, and they're having a completely different experience. One absolutely terrified, one having the time of their life. So it just shows you it isn't the roller coaster. Yeah, it's all starting from here, from our state of mind and our thinking. And that is what is determining our experience. And this applies to everyone, everyone is experiencing their own state of mind. So Maura Gleason says, we are not seeing the world, we're seeing our state of mind's version of the world. This has huge implications for our performance and our well-being, because when we're feeling slightly lower, it's not anything to do with the world. It's just that our state of mind is giving us these slightly darker glasses to wear. And of course, that's colouring how we see the world, and vice versa. So when we think about this in a work context, work often focuses on the results. We often say, right, we need these targets being met, this number of client meetings, this much revenue. And then sometimes we go to the behaviour. Okay, if we want those results, what do we want people to do differently? So we might bring in competency frameworks and influencing skills programs and other things. But what we're missing is the fact that our experience is driving our behaviour, not our technique. Often, even though we know the right thing to do, if our state of mind dips, we're not able to do it. We don't have access to the same resourcefulness. So of course, this is the way it actually works. State of mind determines our experience determines how we behave, and our behaviour leads to the results. So I just want to kind of put it out there to you that it's much more important for you to be aware of your state of mind and doing more and really leveraging when you're in a high state of mind at peak performance, rather than focusing too much on the results and the behaviour, because that is far more downstream. Much better to maintain your own state of mind and help others to really get in a great state of mind as well. So let's continue to think about what this looks like at work. So this is a great example of, we can focus on the behaviour, and that's what organisations tend to do, but of course it doesn't work. So when we did research for the Beyond Limits programme, we found people say things like, we work in silos, preventing true collaboration or sustainable change. Now, I'm sure everyone knows that it's better to collaborate, and it's better to try and get sustainable change. But there's that disconnect, because of course, state of mind often in these companies, especially when we're working with different companies, they're going through huge transformation at the moment. There's changes of processes and line management and structure. So there's a lot of change. And all of this is creating an uncertainty, and people are having that lower state of mind and that experience that is going on to lead them to behave in ways that are not actually helpful. So these next few slides are just designed to give you a sense of what it looks like when we have the limits, when we have too much thinking, versus when we're able to really engage with our state of mind and access our higher states of mind and our peak performance more of the time. To see if you recognize any of these in your culture. So if we've got this limited culture, i.e. we've got limited thinking, we have a lot of beliefs and narratives, we can have confusion, silos, we maybe have a fear of failure, and again that's classic psychological safety. We repeat the same patterns of behaviors and we resist change and connection. So again, all of those things, they really highlight that low state of mind. But in a higher state of mind, we have clarity. We think more about we and the whole. We can get curious about new ideas, get to the source of the patterns of behavior, and we can be more adaptive and collaborative. So we start to see how different it can look if we've got not just us in a high state of mind, but everyone we work with and the whole company. When it comes to our individual performance, again, low state of mind, we're reactive and unfocused. Whenever we're being reactive, we're not operating at our best. And I'm sure some of you have heard the 10-second rule. You know, if you're caught in that emotional trigger and the amygdala hijack, then you maybe want to wait 10 seconds before pressing send on the email. But, you know, it's actually true of anything when we're reactive. If we get to our low states of mind and we recognize these things, all we need to know is, yeah, don't touch anything, take a break. When we're in our limited performance, we're more reliant on tools and techniques. Problems seem abundant and solid. We might be uncomfortable in uncertainty and change happens slowly. Whereas in a high state of mind, we're proactive and focused. We've got unlimited potential for new ideas. We can see that problems are fluid. We're more comfortable with uncertainty and therefore change happens quickly. And this last one, when we think about it from well-being, so we've split them up, but they all really interlink. When we're in a low state of mind, we have a busy mind, we might feel stressed, the need to hustle, we become exhausted. We have the chemistry of adrenaline and cortisol, you know, that really floods us. And we're fighting our biology by having like too much caffeine and sugar. Whereas when we're more in touch with our higher states of mind and accessing them, we've got that peace of mind, that contentment, and we've got effortless effort, more freedom, momentum, more flow, and we can work with our biology rather than against it. So this is all about awareness, and this is a little tool. You may have seen this before if you've joined one of our webinars, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but really this can just help us to think about, where am I right now in my state of mind? If 10 is you at your best, you might call this being on fire or in the zone, your peak performance, and 1 is, you know, in quite a kind of a negative place, you know, there's problems and I can't see a way out of it. And then we've got a scale. So it's worth checking in with yourself. Where am I on this scale? And get used to doing that a few times throughout the day so that you can recognize what your state of mind looks like, and, you know, at different stages throughout the day. And you know, then it's better to have any of the big conversations or do the kind of really important work in the highest state of mind from 6 and above, or even 5 and 6 at neutral, and try and avoid anything that's going to be too emotive when you might be in a more reactive state of mind in 1 to 4. So we're coming to the end of today's session. I thought I'd give you a few takeaways for state of mind. So state of mind determines our experience. So that's the first thing. So it's not coming from the world out there. It's not coming from what this person said, or that I didn't get this promotion, or I need this to be happy. You know, it comes from here. State of mind determines the quality of our thinking. So when we're in a higher state of mind, we're going to have less thinking, less distorted thinking, and lower state of mind, more distorted thinking. And the same is true of everyone. So that means that when we see people in a low state of mind, we don't have to take that personally, because we know that they're just in that low state of mind. And if we can hold ourselves kind of firm and in a high state of mind, we can often help people to bounce back up a bit. In a high state of mind, well-being and performance are effortless. And lastly, when we recognize a low state of mind in ourselves, we should take a break. That's just a sign that my brain is a bit overworked and I need to take a break. Let the psychological immune system come in and lift us. And when we see a low state of mind in others, use curiosity, empathy, and humility. So when we use those things, we're going to help people naturally to shift their own state of mind. The more people in a higher state of mind, the better experience and performance and well-being we're going to have at work. So that was quite a quick one. I'm trying to keep these all to 20 minutes because I appreciate everyone's busy. So we've been looking at, what is peak performance and thinking and how do they work together. This time we looked at our state of mind and what that looks like, how it relates to peak performance, high state of mind, and what it looks like in low state of mind, how our thinking becomes really distorted. So we're going to carry on that to the next part when we're going to have Dr. Giles Croft with us next week. So really looking forward to that. And then we're going to think with a bit of a deeper look at how do my thinking and feelings interact. So this week, start to see your state of mind and other state of mind. So just get used to doing that check-in with yourself and a bit with others as well. The more we can start to make the invisible visible, the better you'll be able to just self-regulate and help other people manage as well. So feel free to look on our LinkedIn pages for more resources, or the website has some good resources to look at. I'll follow up with everyone with some extra things to watch and read. So thank you for the feedback from last session, and feel free to share this experience with your manager, HR or CEO. And if you're liking the content and you feel like you want to learn more and go deeper, then contact us for one-to-one coaching and workshops. So otherwise, thank you very much. Really appreciate you joining today. I'm going to stop the recording, and then if anyone has got some questions for the last few minutes, then you're very welcome to share them with me. So thanks very much and see you next week.